Hiya. It's me again, the irascible Joy Reynolds, and I have with me a very special person, another great guest tonight. Well, you never know who we're going to have here because you never know who will do this show. So many have turned it down, and the only ones that don't turn it down are the management people, like David Bernstein here. Now I want to get ready. Since you're a management guy, let me just set myself up here, okay? First of all, I got the Lysol up because I know that you guys are this is not because of the virus. It's just talking to programming and management people. I used to wipe myself down every night before the show without anything on. Nobody cared. So I do that. The other thing is, we had Sandy Beach and Danny Neverth on the show from WKBW, which is my first big radio station. And I neglected to find this product until too late. But KB it was called, right? So I found a product called K-Boom, which is an antiseptic.
I bought that. I have that. Yes, I have that. It's the only drugs I buy now.
Now, David, you've done some remarkable things in your life. And we got to start somewhere. So how about with Debbie? Where is she? Is she in the other room, your wife?
Yeah, she's in the other room, staying away from me. She hasn't missed a minute with me in 2 months. She's formed a new opinion. 44 years, we're going great. I don't see 45 coming up.
No, she want to be a part of this broadcast?
No, I told her she worked today. She went to the office for the first time since the pandemic. She works in a medical office, and she worked, but there was nobody in the office. No doctor, no nurse, no staff, just her. She went there to do all the physical things have to be done, the billing, the things that are going on in the office. So she went in, and she was a wreck. It was like she felt like she was walking into the dungeon. She says, I need a key to the back door. I won't walk through the door where everybody else goes. And the paranoia
How about
level,
you? How about you? Did you go to work?
I am at work. This is work. When I'm working at Talkers Magazine, this is what it looks like. When I'm teaching one of my 5 classes at Caldwell University, this is what I look like. I sit on the couch. I literally sit on the couch in front of my laptop, and life goes on.
So you're Zooming, but you Zoom all the time, right?
Yeah, you have to do it, and it's difficult when you're doing it with a class full of students who are all focused on something else. Because when you have a screen full of students, their mics become muted, and then their heads go like this. And there's something else going on in their head. Something is happening in there. What is it? How do I get you back? That's like doing a radio show.
Well, you're a program director, so extraordinary. So you've had a monkey house before.
Oh, I have, and I'm so used to it that now when I walk in, I expect it's going to be that way. When I walk into the classroom, I expect it's going to be that way. And by the way, I teach in 2 classrooms. One is a radio studio, and the other is a TV studio. So it has the aura of performance. So when I go in there, to me, it's like doing a radio show. Will I capture an audience into the kid sitting in front of me? Will I be able to have them interested enough to question me on something so I can start getting into details? Because you can't go into the weeds if somebody isn't interested.
Well, what are you doing with the young people? Of course, they mostly are young, probably. But what are you doing? Are you giving them an opportunity to become personalities like we were?
I have 2 paths. One path is spoken word media. If you want to be a spoken word media professional, this is the class for you. I will show you how it works now compared to how it worked then, and I will be more than happy to tell you about all the mistakes I made, not all the successes, because you learn from the mistakes. So that's the radio class. The other class now is communication skills. So it's a class full of nursing students and blue collar worker students. There's no
Ex-priests,
telling what they want to do for a living. Lawyers.
rabbis. No.
Not at the school that's run by Saint Dominic. I'm the only one who is there on Yom Kippur.
I see. Well, you're an interesting study in success because you're unknown by the general public in the mainstream, but you have spoken your word through everybody famous that I could think of in broadcasting, on radio especially. And so your voice has been through everybody, but you're behind the scenes. Oh wait, let me finish my thought here. And then it's a long question. I know you hate these things as the program director.
I'm afraid I won't
Joey.
remember the question. I'm always afraid I won't remember what he asked me.
Ron Luxembourg was on because I wanted to explain to the public watching this, the general schnooks and those who are smart. It's a mix. I want them to know that the people who made the record business and the radio business a great marriage were the promotion men, because they went from city to city with the records. Nobody knows about it except, we do, but the public didn't know there was this movement of people who were actually lobbyists long before Washington knew how to do payola. We can do it. We got it down. But, so David, you're one of those guys. That's why I wanted to have you on. No, not from that. I mean, you're one of those people you've put people on the air all over the country, one way or another, and they've on networks and local. I'm excited about it because I happen to be one of the victims. Performers. You've had so many great talents who have said all of these things, and you've guided us. Now, with me, you did something. I can start with myself because I'm the living example. You left me completely alone to my own craziness. But you said something very significant, and I want to share this on the air for anybody in your class who's watching this, because this is from you. When I first came to work at WOR in New York, which is white-only radio, because we didn't have any black people yet. But, David was looking. And he hired me and put me on the air on the overnight show. Because why? What happened? You can tell the story.
Well, it's not a story. It's a philosophy. The philosophy is be free. I said to Joey, and I know what you're referring to. I said, you've had a rough life. You cannot go on the air. I would love to have you on the air. Love to have you on my radio station. But you cannot go on the air just being Joey the entertainer. You're Joey the guy. You're Joey the person. You are who you are. You've had run-ins with the law. You've never met a mound you didn't like. You've even turned me on to so many good things that I had to go out and get a sponsor for my show just to be on with Joey. And I'm telling you that I have done all my hard work because this show is brought to you by good fucking wine. Now, I told Joey he's got to be himself. You have to talk about all those things. Nobody's going to believe that you're a funny guy 5 hours a night for 5 nights a week. And even if you tape an hour or two, you're still going to have to be funny. So what matters is you have to be everything. Everything that is you, that is the real you. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the stuff that you wish you didn't do, the stuff that who knows what? I can't even believe I did this. It's all part of you. Marriage, divorce, children of divorce. This is not something that we don't want to tell the public that this is what goes on. It goes on in most households. It's real. And if you're doing it, everybody will say it's okay for me to do it too. I'm not endorsing divorce.
And the drugs and the alcohol too.
Yeah, well, sometimes professional and personal blend together.
Oh, yes. But you said to me, you can't talk all night. You can only do Johnny Carson was only doing 10 minutes with 12 writers. He said, so you think you're going to talk all night? That was the beginning.
It was the only way that you could be real. It was the only way to keep you real is to take the burden off you of trying to put on a contrived personality that you would then keep reinventing because every day is a new day. You have new thoughts. But if you can be yourself, think of what we do as ourselves in a typical day. We laugh, we cry, we get angry, we find joy, we take a pleasure walk with our dog, and then we clean up after the dog. It's all part of life. So if you let it all hang out, you can't have a dog without having a doggy bag with you. Okay, that's part of life. Let it all mix in together. And that was my advice for you on the air. Don't be that Joey Reynolds guy who used to be on the radio. Be you. Be Joey Reynolds. Be who you are now.
Well, let's talk a little bit with respect to Bob Aronson, who was doing the show on a network, and he had a terrible accident where he fell off a bike and he went unconscious. And I think no one was around, so he got disoriented and could no longer perform.
It was actually he was riding his bicycle to pick up newspapers to read for the show that night. His bicycle got knocked off into a ditch by a car, and he ended up hit his head. And I had just hired him. I had hired him 8 weeks before, and during his first 8 weeks of employment, I gave him 2 weeks off because he had pre-planned a trip out west and was going to a wedding, and he said all these were part of his plans. I went, fine, great, do your plans, don't worry about it. Life goes on. When you're off that week, we'll cover for you. And so he only did 6 of the 8 weeks, and then he had the accident.
Yeah,
I would have hired you right away, but I didn't have you available right away, and so I started putting people on the air who really, it was an experiment. I wasn't looking for good talent. I was looking for authentic talent. I couldn't find good talent. I found authentic talent. That's when I hired you. And that's why I said what I did. That's why you can't be an authentic talent if you're not willing to be authentic.
Yeah, well, you were almost fired for hiring me because the manager of the station didn't want me, and the owner of the station didn't want me.
Right.
And I had already
so not knowing this,
him over.
I don't know this. I walk into the office and say, I got a great idea. Yeah, hotshot, what's your idea? I'm going to bring in Joey Reynolds for overnights. Who? Joey Reynolds. What are you, schmuck? No, I really mean it. I'm telling you, Rick, you're going to love him. Bob, you'll love him. Joe, this is going to be the best. Not knowing that you and Rick and Bob and Joe had a relationship like this. I have no idea if the relationship tells me anything. Teach me to stay in the background. But I so believed it was the right thing to do that I decided this is my first real test. This is the thing that's going to help me determine whether or not I should stay. Like if I mean, great job, really good money. And I'm in broadcasting. I'm going like, I can't believe I'm making this kind of money. And yet, I know that it won't last unless something happens with the station. Because I didn't think the station was very
contemporary.
Good.
It wasn't up to speed.
Wasn't very good.
Okay.
It wasn't the kind of station I would listen to. It wasn't even the kind of station my parents listened to. And my parents, the World War II generation.
Yeah.
So I thought in a moment of I want to do this. I called up the station. I said, I want to be the program director. They said, we're in the process of just hiring one. I said, okay, do me a favor. Give me a 1 shot meeting. So sit over breakfast. We could drink coffee. I'm an old guy. Eggs can drip down the side. You'll have a laugh, and it'll be over. So they agreed to have the meeting with me. We had the meeting, and I told them in the most respectful and politeful terms I could, your radio station sucks. I know nobody said that to them before. And
you didn't bring that bottle of wine with you, did you?
No, I finished it just before the interview.
That's right.
And it was an 8 a.m. interview, by the way.
Oh boy.
And I commuted from Jersey. So I sat them down. So we sat down at breakfast, and I said to them, this is the thing about this kind of radio station. Big old battleships, and they make a lot of money. And turning them around has to be so immaculately slowly that nobody realizes it's happening. because your listening base is old because they've been listening to the same thing for a long period of time. Doesn't mean that they don't like it, and it doesn't mean that it isn't good, but it does mean that you're not going to win over anybody new. And as your listenership dies off or moves to Florida, whichever comes first, you're going to have a smaller and smaller and smaller audience. So that day, every radio station fears that day is coming. I say the day is here. And that's why I wouldn't listen to your radio station, even though I know it's a great station. And I admire the money it's made and the heritage aspect of it. But the clock's still ticking. We're still moving. And either you're in the program or you're not. You don't get a chance to decide whether or not, they said, well, we never played the game for ratings. And I said, it doesn't matter whether you do it for ratings or not. Ratings simply means how many people are listening. If you have big ratings, it means you have a lot of listeners who are happy with what you're doing, or intrigued with what you're doing, or confused by what you're doing, and it's making them listen more. If you're just giving them the same pablum every day and they like that pablum, okay, but not everybody's going to like that pablum. And those who don't like it or liked it and went, enough already. I'm sure Law and Order is still a great show. Doesn't have the same ratings it did in its third, fourth, and fifth season. Just human nature.
There's a little difference. I've been, since we're locked in the house, we have a lockdown. I've been watching Jeopardy reruns, but I already know the answers. I've watched it first time around. So
I did that for when I was working in New Hampshire. New Hampshire had Jeopardy on TV at 7:30. When I would come back to New Jersey, it was on at 7. So I'd write down the answers, and I'd call up my morning man in the New Hampshire radio station, and I would tell him, okay, here are the answers as follows. Then at 7:30, he'd sit down with his wife and watch Jeopardy and go, Gingman Ho. What is Gingman Ho? And his wife would go, how would you know that?
That's great.
You didn't know that?
And another thing you did, you hired Gene Barry. Now, is it Gene Barry? Is that his name?
No, I hired Gene Burns.
Gene Burns, yeah. When I first got there, he's very formal. And
very formal.
And he had his head, something wrong with his head.
He had surgery on his neck, I guess.
Yeah, and he was on radio, so it didn't count so much, but he would never look at me. And I was annoyed. I could never get his attention, And I'm trying to get him to like me. And he's going, he didn't even go, There was no movement. But I didn't know.
I should have done what I did. I never spoke with him. I never spoke with him without sitting in a chair.
The other thing I was thinking about, you've had a lot of people, but when you brought Joan Rivers in, that was a death nail.
I was in a box.
Yes.
Well, I had to hire her because I said I would. When Barry Gray died. Remember when Barry Gray died?
Oh yeah, and he was great. I liked him.
Just a wonderful man, a fascinating man.
Yeah.
He died. and I was brought into the office. They said, well, who's replacing Barry Gray? You talking to me? Well, it's it's Joan Rivers.
You made it up.
I made it up. I swear to you, I made it up. They said, Joan Rivers. I said, that's right, Joan Rivers. You know, you read in the management books look confident. Joan Rivers. How you gonna get Joan Rivers? What's the difference? I say I'm gonna get Joan Rivers. I will get Joan Rivers. They're like, keep me posted on that one, big boy. I go back to my office in tears. What have I done? So I call the agents. I figured she's got to work for an agency. And Waleski, the wonderful administrative assistant that really held the programming department together, said, okay, calm down. I'm going to call and find out what agency she works in. So we called, found out she works for the William Lawrence agency. I said, this is Mr. Bernstein calling for Mr., and she did it. And she waited for him to get on the phone. When he got on the phone, she said, all right, hold for Mr. Bernstein. And meanwhile, I'm in my office watching TV. and the call comes. And I tell this guy.
Running a radio station.
I tell this guy that fan of Joan Rivers, love her work, admire the glass ceilings that she has broken. And now I have another one in mind. It's something she has never done before. She has never had a chance to speak her mind. Even when she was on Politically Incorrect, she was required to say this, but you can't say that. You can talk about religion, but you can't say this about religion. I said, I want to take off the chains. She's a smart woman. She's an educated woman. She's got a great sense of humor. She's a name, and I want her here. And I want to give her a chance to do something nobody has ever given her a chance to do, and that's be Joan Rivers. That's what I want. I don't have a lot of money to pay. I'm not making a movie. This is not late night TV. But it's going to be a compelling experience for her because she's going to have real one-on-one engagement, one person at a time, and the world will be listening in. Every night. Appointment radio.
Good sales pitch.
My goal was to get a no from her so I could go and say, I actually spoke to her. I didn't know she was going to say yes. Then I'm meeting. So I haven't hired her yet. So we have a couple more meetings, and I get to her office. Now we're having a meeting in her office, and I can see that she's really serious about doing this. And I'm thinking, this I think is going to happen. This might actually happen. And she's sitting at her desk and she's looking at a calendar, and each calendar is a month, and she looks at March, and she goes, I'm going to be in Vegas on this week, and I have a performance to do at Pennsylvania on this. Okay, we could move. And she's looking at things and deciding what she could move around. She gets to May, and she looks at May, and there's one big glaring thing on May, and it says May 12th, Red Ball. And she looks at me and she says, you know what the red ball is? And I had no idea. And I said, a painful condition. He said, I'll take the job. I'm in. And she took the job.
Oh, that's great. I know. I was there. Wait a minute.
But that was the conversation that eventually brought her into 1440.
Well, we had a great radio station. And, although you gussied it up a lot, the fact of the matter is that there was a family feeling. It was the last of the radio stations in the whole country that actually had personalities who were themselves and variety. Nobody was doing variety. I guess a couple, maybe in Minneapolis and not even Hartford. You had WTIC in Hartford. They didn't do this kind of personality. They were
No,
relying on music.
no, yes, they were.
And Bob Steele in the morning. But you know,
That's
you've
right.
when you went to Boston, you had big time radio jobs. I mean,
I took the music off Boston. WBZ was still playing a few records an hour.
yeah.
And I thought, I went, my God, and I'm such a music fan. I love music, but I felt the music was interrupting the conversations. We have to stop to play Billy Joel. What? Like, what world is that in? Here is a bulletin from CBS News right after Cyndi Lauper and Time After Time. Come on, that's like.
And it was owned by Westinghouse at the time.
It was owned by Westinghouse, right?
Yeah, and they had
right.
WINS, which was all talk and news, and that was a rock and roll station when Alan Freed was there at the beginning of radio rock and roll. The expression came from there. So I always said that it's the right station. Westinghouse is the right thing because you open the door and the light goes on.
Society blended back then. There were multiple facets of radio stations, each part devoted to a different person in the family. It could be mom going shopping. It could be dad going to work. It could be the children going to school, because all that was the perception of a normal family in the 50s. Okay. That, I showed up at WOR in the mid 90s. That kind of radio didn't fit anymore. It was out of place. And I told them, I'm sorry, but you're not going to win with this. Let me come in as the program director. Let me put together what will be entertaining. I'm not trying to blow off your audience.
Well,
they're doing a good job of it themselves.
No, and you also had you didn't do anything with the FM. You were focused on this 50,000 watt big radio station that was the first station in New York, and you made it work. You made it work.
Well, I liked it. My affinity for the station was only because it represented New York in so many ways. Although I never listened to it, it just wasn't the station. Not even my parents would listen to that. And they were WNEW AM listeners.
Well, also your father. Wait, your father liked the Yankees, and they didn't carry the Yankees.
No, my father. No. My father was Brooklyn Dodgers all the way. And then in 1957 he became a very unhappy man. And then in 1961, when they announced that in 1962, meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. A new team, National League team. My father was reborn. And I'm a loyal Mets fan because of that.
Yeah.
I even saw the Mets play at Polo Grounds.
Your career is based on personality, but there's something about you that no one would know until we bring this up. You love the early music, the rhythm and blues, which was based on roots music, gospel music, on blues. Music.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you go back to Blind Lemon and some of these real unknown names to the rock and roll community. But go ahead. I grew up in the South, but it was the South of Brooklyn. Oh. So I don't really know much about that culture, but what I've read and what I've seen, what I've listened to really turned me on. I didn't know that was of interest to me. But because of a love of music, because in my teens, I was listening to top 40 AM radio, and it became, that radio was for me. It wasn't for my parents, and that. This was a radio designed for me, and I was 13, and the Beatles were here, and they owned me, and I realized that there was something personally is affecting me. Even though I know they're not really talking to me because they can't really talk to me through this radio, but somehow I'm getting more and more hooked into this. And I realize that radio is communicating to me, and I realize the communication comes from the voice. I can measure happiness, anger, the thought of somebody being frightened, that shaky, trying to hold it together. You can hear every emotion that a human being has in a voice, and it's just fascinating. That combined with music, just because I love music, became entrenched in radio. Radio represented both of those things. Yeah.
So I never stopped. I don't think I ever stopped being the radio listener. And I never, and I think if I have any success stories from programming radio stations, it's because I was the listener. I knew what I wanted to hear. I knew what was relevant to me, and I knew what was just, I'm wasting my time listening. You didn't tell me anything. What you just said to me, I don't need to know. But other things that people said to me, it was like, my God, thank you for making me hear that. And that became my mantra. I used to tell my talk show hosts, I want people at the end of the time that they're listening, whether they listen for 5 minutes or 5 hours, I want them to be able to say, thanks WOR for letting me know. Thanks WTIC for letting me know. Thanks WBZ for letting me know. The feeling of gratitude for the whatever time they spent with a radio station would likely bring them back.
You think they're going to do that after they watch this?
I think I'm going to be viewed as a fraud.
No, you're great. And when did this stop? When did this not yours? Your merry-go-round. You're on the same merry-go-round we're all on. But when did the day the music died was a song? How about the day radio died?
Well, radio has had several deaths, so it's still the heart is still pumping. But the mind isn't. So by that I mean, if you want to turn on a radio station, walk over to your radio, if you should be able to find one still, and turn it on. You'll be able to listen to the radio. However, what you listen to is going to be a fraction of what made up a whole radio station. Maybe you'll hear the music, or maybe you'll hear a newscast. But you won't get what you can't get in 100 other places without getting up out of your chair. I wanted my newsmen, my news people, to be credible news people first, but also personalities. You don't have to say the stock market, the futures look bad in the market today. You can say, don't even open up your 401k today. Wait till tomorrow. That's the same message, but how do you want to hear it?
It's personal.
It's personal. Everything is personal. Everything is personal.
Well,
my personality is personal, and I tried to use that on other talent and let them see what I'm about. I had a consultant once say to me that he said, "I think I hadn't seen him in a long time." He said, "You're programming WRKO." I said, "How would you know?" He said, "Because it sounds like you."
That must be Holland Cook. Holland Cook said that.
No. It was actually E. Carl.
Oh,
from San Luis.
I want to mention you've had so many good people, and he's one of them. We've had a lot of good help through the years on guiding our thoughts and giving us ideas we can pick and choose. And there's so much controversy right now. For instance, we're in a season where I don't know the difference between medicine and politics. It's kind of like, I want to take medicine to get rid of politics. I don't know. I don't know what the hell to do except I'm watching in awe, and I'm saying, what are we doing? What are we trying to do? I don't know.
I thought that meditation was the answer, although I heard it wrong. I thought he said medication.
Medication.
So the last 2 months have been very bad.
It's a war. We have a war now. I mean, it's a war with an enemy that we don't know where he or she is or they are.
I know, and one of the things I've noticed in this whole pandemic thing is that men's chins are turning white. I don't know how this is happening. I don't know why, but I'm telling you, it's happening. It's not just me.
Well, if this had happened during my psychedelic period, it would have been ordinary. That would have been nothing. It's another episode. Now, David, wait. I want to get something across before we end this today, because you're a teacher. You've always been a good coach. And you are. One of the things that I want to tell the story quickly. I know that I don't want to take the air out of the entire Zoom. But here. I like the basketball. I like basketball because basketball moves fast. And I love the idea that there is a farm team for sports. We don't have one in radio. I saw Cleveland before when we were still able to assemble, and Cleveland brought a 19-year-old player and they played Boston, which is, the Celtics, great team, the number one team. And so this kid, he drilled his way through. Now, they let him do that because he was young. He was 19, and he was on fire. But the senior members know how to, they have the experience of the scope of things, so they could bring it down, and the combination makes it work. Now, my point is that we've done that even with Miami Heat, which has one of the greatest coaches ever. He was with Boston. Mm-hmm. And so mm-hmm. I'm thinking, we never did that with radio. That's where we stopped. The AM stations have all become arguing bitch boxes about politics. And then they've chosen a side.
That's okay if it's not the same person in every market. If it's the same three people in every market, right. It doesn't matter where you live. I'm happy. I want to know what's happening locally.
Okay.
I'm interested in that.
Okay. That's what I'm getting at. Now, here's where I'm going. Locally, we used to create on a radio, which I was on, I would play a record I liked. And then it would become a local phenom, maybe. And it was, one of them was mine. We forced it to be number one, rest in my room. But anyway, the fact of it's a novelty. But we'd take a local team, use them at our dances, maybe, and it became phenomenally successful. And moving on to Rochester and Syracuse, and then being regional, moving up to Boston, and maybe New York, which is the last stop. And then you become a national hit, and it becomes legendary, and then we have the big names. So it started locally. It was local to regional to national. That was the route from every city that we were in. Whether it's Wheeling, West Virginia, or you started in Detroit, you still had to go through the process. So we've eliminated the process of that. With radio not being local, we have these national shows, but you also have an owner that owns 1,600 cities, and that's too much to handle for the president of the United States, obviously. So how's he going to do with a radio owner? They got the same problem the White House has. You can't make everybody happy, and you're not going to get everybody's attention, and they're not all going to like you, but they're not all going to hate you either. It's such a dynamic.
But it's a dynamic that's based on personality.
Yeah.
Because you can watch 3, 4, or 7 newscasts a night, and you're going to pick the one whose personality you like. The news is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So what we do, I do it in the classroom like I did it on radio. It's flavor. What's the flavor? What's it like when you walk into my classroom, for example? Do you feel good? Do you feel apprehensive? Do you feel I'm going to get singled out and I'm going to get embarrassed because it's a communications class? Is this guy teaching the course, does he think that everything has to be perfect, and if I don't speak perfectly or I don't do it right, I'm a failure or I'm a loser? Or is it a different attitude? I believe it is. The attitude is, I don't care what you want to do for a living. All I know is that you want to succeed at it. I'm going to teach you the communication skills that it takes to make people decide if they like you or don't like you, if they're comfortable with you or not comfortable with you. They're not going to hire you for how much you know. They're going to hire you for how much you're willing to do what they need you to do. And if you're willing to do it their way, and then they're more than happy to teach you. So you want to get, I won't say never, but I rarely got turned down from a job.
Yeah.
And the 2 times I got turned down for a job, twice, I got turned down, and a year later I got called and said, hey, this one might be for you. I liked you better for morning drive than afternoon drive. So it's the impression that you make is such a lasting impression that I think that's what communications is all about. And to me, it's the same on radio as it is standing in front of a group of people or talking one-on-one like you and I are doing it now, or doing it where we can see each other, or doing it on a phone.
So where do we go to see you now? How do we get in touch so that
you want to see even more?
Yeah, well, I want everybody.
I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to take a nap, and then I'll be around a little while. I'm going to finish my sponsored wine.
Oh God, hide that bottle, will you?
We'll cut that out.
Where are we going? Where are we going with you now? How do we get in touch with you and see you?
Well, I'm always.
I mean, you should be teaching. You should be teaching a series on this, but that's my advice. But you didn't ask.
I would do that, but then my students will get ahead of me.
Okay.
I don't want that to happen. But I tried something else. I tried doing the class without handing out the syllabus. I said, I have one, but if I give you a syllabus, then you come in every day and you look at the syllabus and you say, oh, today we're going to persuasive conversations. And that's what you think you're coming in. I don't want you to come in with anything in your head. I want you to come in like, I have to be at this place at 3:00. I have to be in room 224 at 3:00. And so you show up at room 224 at 3:00. There's a teacher in front of the room. How you doing? What's going on in your lives? You guys stressed out because you got finals coming up? Are you guys like all excited because it's spring break coming up? Like, where's your head at? And I get them to start a conversation. Eventually, it only takes about 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most to figure out enough of the internal classroom conversation to start taking it into a direction. And then I just start going in the direction, but I don't tell them I'm doing that. So when we arrive, when we get there, I just say, now, I just persuaded you for a conversation that we weren't even having. We weren't even discussing the finals. And yet I just persuaded you, do you want a multiple choice final or do you want an essay final? What do you want? Well, we just debated it out. And we just learned how to do a debate. You guys didn't even know that. If I had told you next Tuesday we're going to be doing debates, you'd go, debates. I said, well, this is how I want to teach. And as long as this school thinks that's cool, I don't get a book. I tell the kids no text, but you just have to come up. You just have to show up.
Amazing guy, an amazing guy. And we've had some cutouts and some, we're having a storm. I'm in Florida right now, and we're starting to finally get some rain. We haven't had it in a couple of weeks, which is very unusual, but we're getting into that storm season. This is when we prepare for the hurricane. But I already got all the supplies, and we had toilet paper for the hurricane.
This is going to be a sanitary hurricane period.
Oh man, I'll tell you something. This has got to end pretty quick because we're all, we're going into a mental ranch right now. That's the way this goes.
I have noticed. One, I have a step above everybody else. I'm already a little bit ahead of
yeah. Oh, this is it.
Because that's normal for me because my whole life has been coming up with ideas for people to do on the radio. When you look at the marketing aspect, like Pink Floyd's new album comes out. It was 1979. I told my guy, go in the studio, lock the door, say you're locking out the program director and the general manager and the engineers and everything because you got the new Pink Floyd album and you're going to play it all the way through non-stop.
Good.
I'll even do a countdown. Not that I'm telling anybody to record it. That stuff makes the paper. Bob Grant, I want you to quit tomorrow. What?
Yeah,
let's make some noise. Quit tomorrow. Walk out in the middle of the show. Have a good reason. And really go home.
Well, what happened when you did that is, first of all, he was considered, Disney bought WABC and they thought he was too racist.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, so here they're using black people to redo Snow White. So don't even go there. But now you got Bob Grant is quitting on WOR, and who shows up at Al Sharpton? The Reverend Al Sharpton, who's always an arch enemy of his anyway on the radio. It's starting to rain and it's coming this way. So this is always a good strike the set. So anyway, I'm in the middle of this thing. So Bob Grant has Al Sharpton comes out with that hair waving in the wind and the cameras follow him. He looked like Antonio Banderas. His hair is waving and he's ranting about Bob Grant and the race and all this. And so the cameras are done. They go home and you know what? Al leaves. It's only a show.
He split, and it was. And I thought, I did the same thing. I suspended Joan Rivers for a week, and told her.
Well, she swore on the air.
Yeah, so I thought it was like, if I have to suspend her, okay, I'll suspend her. But there's no reason why she can't be on other air. So she went that night. She went on the Tonight Show. the Today Show the next day, Larry King Live, Entertainment Tonight, Nightline. She was on every channel that you could think of.
Great. She's great.
Talking about what happened. It was great.
She's great. Well, I used to take her material and reread it at 3 a.m, and then she caught me because she had those writers, and they would sit there with the wastebasket.
More clearly than I used to tune in at 3 a.m. because I didn't understand the jokes when she said it. I got
it. David, I love you. We got to go. You know why? Because the set is being blown away.
Okay.
Hurricane.
Well, I'm ready.
It's
time to go. It's time to go.
Are you sorry? You got a sponge. Are you sorry you hired me?
Oh, no. If I hired you, I'd be sitting here with a bottle of wine and a pillow talking to nobody.
I love you. You're great. David Bernstein. You can look him up. Can we Google you?
Yeah, you can Google me.
Okay. He doesn't want to be bothered. Here we go.
You've now seen everything.
Let a smile be your umbrella, but don't get a mouthful of rain. There you go.